If you're a creator and you already have a skill set, I would really encourage you to add all three layers. Start with a course, build a group coaching on top of it, and then offer individual one-on-one coaching for the 5% of VIP clients.
Your path to making your first $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 is just, that's all so much quicker if you are specific.
So you have one customer that buys multiple offers, and so the lifetime value of that one customer is way higher than only having one offer available. And it's always going to be easier to sell to existing customers than it is to find new customers, right? So that's one reason. Second reason is, for today's episode, the very first episode of the Write Build Scale podcast, I am joined by my business partners Sinem Gunel and Philip Hofmacher. And today we will be sharing the 5 most important lessons that we have learned from building a 7-figure creator business. Now, actually, we will be sharing a bonus lesson at the end of the 5 lessons at the end of this episode, which is quite of a funny story, actually. More about that later. Sinem, Philip, are you excited for the episode?
I'm even more excited than the first time.
Yeah, I really was looking forward to doing this episode in person, but I think doing it digitally is also fine. So let's go.
Awesome. Yeah, let's start with lesson number 1, which is that if it is a business, treat it like a business. Sinem, what does that mean to you, that lesson?
This is mostly a mental challenge for most writers. Over the last 5 years, we have worked with thousands of writers. And the biggest challenge I see is when people want to make money, they want to write and make money online, but they treat it like a hobby and they don't want to think about the business side of things. And there's really a clash of interest, because if you want your writing, your craft, your art to be a business, you have to treat it like a business and you have to show up as if it is your job. And I always like to compare this to any other job. If you are working in a company and you want to get promoted or you want to do an exceptionally good job in a project, you have to kind of go that extra mile, right? You cannot treat your job like a hobby and expect the next promotion, the next raise, or whatever it is that you're striving for. And it's the same in the creator economy. If you're starting out, there might be a lot of question marks. There might be a lot of things that you still have to figure out that is not straightforward in the beginning. But even just the mental switch of, okay, this is a job that I'm showing up to. Even if it's just an hour per day that I'm showing up to it, I'm treating it as if this is actually a serious responsibility and a commitment that I have towards my craft, towards my audience, the message that I'm sharing. And I love to think about myself as well, because when I started writing online, I had a full-time job, I had a side business, and I was finishing my studies. So I didn't have a lot of time left for my writing. And basically what I did was I would wake up at 5 a.m., write for an hour, and really make sure that I can get the most out of those short hours that I had to invest into my writing. If I hadn't done that, I would have wasted so much more time dabbling around and just not treating it like a hobby, basically. And that's what you don't want to do if you really want to see results as quickly as possible.
I think that's really the key distinction, right? Treating it either as a hobby or as a business. And both are fine, but I think you have to make a decision for yourself. If you want to write online and make money with it, it's like, be honest to yourself that that's what you want. And I don't think like dabbling in the middle of, well, it's a hobby, but if I could monetize it, that would be nice. I think that's actually the worst spot to be in, because then you never really make a decision. And am I purely doing this for fun because I want to write about my passions and interests? Or am I doing this to build a business? I think it's important to make that decision for you. Again, any of these decisions are fine. Like if you want to treat this as a hobby and a pure passion project, that's absolutely fine and go for it. But if you want to monetize your creator business, then actually treat it like a business. Philip, what does that mean to you? If it is a business, treat it like a business.
I mean, I'm completely with the two of you guys. It's totally fine to have your creator thing as a hobby, But if you want to run it as a business, you need to make a decision. You really need to be honest to yourself, and you need to be able to make sacrifices if you want to build a business. Making sacrifices also means that you need to have a more strategic approach. If something is a hobby, you can show up whenever you feel like it. It's totally fine to show up one night and don't show up the next night. But if you want to turn this into a business, you need to make sacrifices. And the easiest way for me to make those sacrifices was to, first of all, really commit to it, to take full ownership, and then to follow a specific approach. And this approach basically helped me build discipline. And you can do that by setting up systems that keep you accountable, by establishing routines and habits in your life to really make sure you are in an environment where you are focused on making things work. Because once again, if it's a hobby, it's totally fine if you're not seeing results. If it's a business, you need to see results. You need to make money quickly. Otherwise, you will run out of funds or motivation or whatever, and then you will need to stop with it. And then you are moving on to the next thing. And the one thing that I want everyone to understand that want to take their business seriously is if you set up the right systems and routines, things will be much easier for you.
Absolutely. And I do think, and maybe this is a bit of a controversial take, but that people avoid this decision of is it a business for me or a hobby, also as a way to protect themselves, right? Because when you treat it like a business, now all of a sudden you might have to do things you might not necessarily enjoy. Let's say marketing and sales. I talked to Landon about this on the podcast, which will be the next podcast that airs in a week. And we talked a lot about marketing. And I think that a lot of people, especially online creators, they enjoy the creating part and the content creation part, but not the marketing part. And therefore they might protect themselves. Like, okay, I'm just treating this as a hobby or a side hustle, but not really as a business, because that way I don't have to do any marketing. But I think that is very subconsciously a way to protect maybe yourself from any rejection or from being seen as a marketer or, any negative associations that people have with marketing. Do you think, Sinem, do you think that for people to make this decision that it's a business, that they need to overcome any beliefs or mindset shifts?
For a lot of people, I think the recommendation I have is allow yourself to take small steps. I see so many people getting really overwhelmed when they even just think of this idea of, oh, I'm starting a business now. How do I do my taxes? How do I do this? How do I do that? And the truth is, you can take it one small step at a time. Yes, there is a lot to figure out, but you don't have to figure it all out instantly or before you even get started. You don't have to figure out how to do your taxes before you even made your first dollar online. It's a mental shift to say, okay, I'm taking this seriously and I actually want this to be a job or a part-time job within this period, whether it's 6 months, a year, whatever time frame you set for yourself. But I understand that I'm in a learning process and that there is a lot to figure out, and that's okay. It's one step at a time.
Absolutely. So let's move on to lesson number 2, which is to focus on solving problems. And really the foundation of a thriving creator business is to identify what pain points do people have, specifically what pain points does my audience have, and how can I build a product or offer that is the solution to that pain point. And I think that this is really important. Really look at your offers and your products as look at it honestly. Is this a nice to have or is it a must have? And you really want to be in that must have category, or as I like to call it, painkiller products. This is really a lesson I learned the hard way myself when I had my productivity newsletter, Peak Productivity. And one of the products that I created was a course on morning routines because I thought it was cool and I was very much into morning routines. So I just created a course on it. I thought if I'm into morning routines, then other people are as well. And this is going to be awesome. Now, it turned out, I didn't really validate if there was enough demand for it, if morning routines were actually a pain point for people, a problem for my audience. So I built the product, super excited about it. I launched it and basically crickets. I hardly made any sales with that product because it's a nice to have, right? It's not a must have for people. So this is where it's really important, where you take a look at the audience you've already built and you talk to them. You gather data. hey, what are you struggling with? What is currently a challenge you are facing? What's like keeping you up at night? What's preventing you from reaching your goals? And people are really excited to talk about this. They're eager to share, their current challenges with you because they want to overcome it. And if you can gather data on, hey, this is actually what my audience is struggling with the most, this is what's keeping them up at night, these are their pain points, then you can build the offer, you can build the product that they really need and want. You can build a painkiller offer. So for example, what I did with my productivity newsletter, I would always send out emails after my failed course launch. I would send out emails just asking questions. Hey, what is your number one goal right now? Why do you want to become more productive? And people would say, well, because I want to write a book, because I want to build a business, or I want to get in better shape. Pretty different goals. Then I would ask, what is the number one obstacle currently keeping you from achieving that goal? And people were telling me, I'm not following through. I'm setting goals, but I'm not really taking action on it. I procrastinate. It's laziness. In other words, right, procrastination, that was actually their pain point. That was the thing that most of my audience was struggling with. So I was like, interesting, because I struggled with that myself as well in the past with procrastination. So let me build a course, Procrastination Antidote, that specifically tackles this pain point for my audience that they've told me they experienced. And that became my best-selling mini course, actually. And that's when I really learned, like, it's super important if you run an online business that you think of, okay, what problems am I solving for people? Because ultimately that's what people pay for. They don't just pay because they will learn information. They pay because currently they are struggling with something that they don't feel like they can solve themselves, and they need your help with solving that problem. And I think the more specific you can get on what problems you solve and the more painful problems you are solving, the easier it is to monetize your creator business. Sinem, what are your thoughts on that, on solving problems and how important that is for building a creator business?
It's incredibly important, and I want to give an example, or our own example actually, of Write Build Scale. But before I do that, the number one challenge I see with being specific for most creators, they think it is boring to only focus on one problem or one type of audience member, and to do that for a long period until things click in or until your product has sold successfully. And I like to kind of flip the script here, because a lot of creators, and this is also true for most of our clients, right? They are multi-passionate. They love to talk about a lot of things. They might be an expert on one topic, but they also have interest and knowledge in a lot of other topics, maybe in completely different categories. The advantage of being specific is that you move faster. You understand your audience better. You have a much easier time deciding what type of content to create, what type of products to create, and how to sell those products, which means that your path to making your first $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 is just, that's all so much quicker if you are specific. And the way I like to look at it is, yes, you might be a multi-passionate person, but you can be a specific creator. Your creator business doesn't define your personality. And I think that's a mental block a lot of people face. They're like, oh, if I only talk about this one thing, I'm kind of a boring person because my life revolves around this one topic. No, I'm passionate about a lot of different things. And I sometimes kind of sprinkle in stories into my content, but 99% of what I say is very specifically tailored to solving specific problems for my specific audience. And if you look at Write, Build, Scale, for example, you could say that we're in the writing niche or in the content creation niche. But what's more important is that we are solving specific problems for creators at specific stages. We are helping you solve the problem of, you want to start writing online, but you don't know how. So we help you take the first steps. We're solving the problem of, you have an audience, but you don't know how to monetize. So we help you build your first product and actually sell it. And those statements of what problems do I solve or problem do I solve are so much more important than kind of putting a label and saying, oh, I'm in this niche. Because the niche, a lot of people think about niching down, but niche is still very vague. If you're in the self-improvement niche, That's like having no niche because it's still so broad and big and it doesn't tell me anything about what you can do for me or if your work is for me as a person at all.
Philip, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it always comes down to keeping it simple and finding a super, super small niche. Just as Sinem said, if you're in the productivity niche, you are basically speaking to millions or billions of people. So instead of creating the ultimate morning mastery whatsoever course, start with something super simple. Start with something like how to get up within 5 minutes after your alarm rings. Something like that. One super specific problem that everyone can relate to. And once you help someone wake up instantly when their alarm rang, you can then help them with the next step of the journey. You can then help them to establish the morning routine. But you need to start at one super specific point that people can relate to. And if you want to go more niche, focus on the target audience. Create a course for female entrepreneurs who want to get up at 5 in the morning the moment their alarm rings, or focus on students or whatsoever. The idea is that you really try to speak to one specific target audience about one specific problem, because only that way you can really resonate with them. If you try to reach everyone, you will very likely end up shouting into the void and no one will really pay attention to your message.
That's a really great point. And I think what comes to my mind is also then with content creation, right? Are you creating content for likes or are you creating content to attract your ideal audience? And if you have very specific offers and you solve specific problems, then the content you create should be aimed at attracting that person that's facing that problem. Now, that might mean that your content is not necessarily going viral or gets 1,000 or however many likes, but it doesn't need to do that, right? The aim in that sense of content creation is to attract the right person who is actually facing that problem and wants it solved right now, because they are the ones most likely to buy. And I think that can be a big misconception, right, in the creator economy, where there's so much focus on how can you write viral content? How can you get maximum likes and comments and shares and that stuff? And it's all great. It can all help absolutely with building your business, but it can quickly become a vanity metric or a distraction from actually building a profitable business and selling your offer. So I think that is really important to keep in mind. So let's move on to lesson number 3, which is collaboration over competition. We work a lot with other creators and we collaborate with them. And Philip, I think you are especially strong with building new connections with people, reaching out and getting collaborations. Can you explain a little bit about the power of the mindset of collaboration over competition?
Absolutely. Let me start with the beginning, or actually with my own journey. So when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I wanted to become a tennis professional. And I grew up playing tennis 7 days a week. I was attending tournaments and I was training with a group of friends. And then all of us were attending the same tournaments. And since we've been friends, but we also participated in the same tournaments, there was always like a weird feeling. It was like, yeah, I was cheering for them, but on the inside, I was always hoping that I will go further in the tournament than they are. So even though we were friends, we were not really, we were officially supporting each other, but there was still some kind of rivalry between all of us because we've been competitors. And this is something that, looking back, really, really was hard for me to understand. And let's be honest, I was 9 or 10 years old. I didn't knew better. But one thing that I learned many, many years later when I started my digital business is that if you want to go far, you need to go together with other people. You need to have the support. And I really learned that sometimes 1 + 1 can equal 3. Basically meaning if one person has an audience and you have an audience and you work together, you can both grow your audiences. While on the other hand, if you would be competing with each other, you would probably try to badmouth the other person or do anything that will not only hurt the other person, but it will also hurt your own audience. Because once someone in your audience understands the power of collaboration, they don't want to see you competing with other people. They also want to see you collaborating with other people. And that's exactly what we did right from day one when we joined Substack. I think we've been on the platform 2 or 3 days and we already created a list of people that we want to collaborate with. There are so many amazing creators out there, like David McElroy, like Russell Nohelty, like Yana, GY, and many, many others. And the cool thing is, collaborating is quite easy with them, because if you find someone that also has this collaborative mindset, they are just waiting for you to reach out to them. And this made a huge difference for us. And even nowadays, one of our biggest growth engines are collaborations. No matter if we're talking about affiliate marketing, if we're talking about recommending each other, if we're talking about email swaps. These are just awesome tools how you can add additional value to your audience and also grow your audience by putting yourself in front of other people. And it always comes down to one thing for me. If you want to collaborate or partner with others, you need to be able to create win-win situations. Whenever you're approaching a collaboration saying, how can I get as much as possible from the other creator and give as little as possible, it will fail. It will not work out. But if you aim to create win-win situations, you can really build amazing things, not only for yourself, but also for other people. And looking back at my journey as a tennis player, I can tell you it's so much more fun to see others win and to genuinely be happy for them rather than by being disappointed that they are reaching a milestone faster than you are reaching it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say like the main motivation also for starting this podcast is with the collaboration in mind, right? Because already this is episode 1, but I've already recorded a bunch of episodes with really cool creators and entrepreneurs, and that will go live over the next few weeks. And it's such an easy way to collaborate with people, right? We have a podcast, we can invite people on that we didn't know before, we didn't have an existing connection with them before. And now we do. And we see that with some of the people we've had on the podcast, now they are going to write a guest post, or we're maybe launching something together, or we're doing a Substack live stream together in a few weeks. So yeah, I think like this whole notion of collaborating is such a powerful tool. And even if you look at us here at Right Build Skill, like Sinem, I think you reached out to me on Medium, or I reached out to you on Medium back in 2018 when we were both still starting from zero. We hardly had any followers on social media or on Medium at all. But we first like got that connection there, jumped on a few calls to just exchange tips on like how can we grow together, how can we improve as a writer, how can we build our businesses. And it's so cool how that collaboration that started out as just one message, one call, now turned into running a business together here at Right Build Skill. So that also goes to show you never know what one reach out message can turn into, right? It can turn into amazing opportunities. Now, Sinem, one thing that you often say is the question is not like how can I win or how can we as a Right Build Skill win, but who can we win together with? Can you explain a little bit what that means and what that mindset means to you?
For me, this mostly means bringing together different strengths and talents, because if you look at our set of partners that we collaborate with regularly, they each have their own style. They each have an audience that trusts them. And the question is always, how can we create win-win situations and win-win opportunities, as we said before? And if you think about collaboration as winning together, one thing becomes really clear. You want to collaborate with people that you get along with. And I think this is really underrated. A lot of people look at collaboration as this growth hack, solely focusing on what they are going to gain, and they are looking to get the biggest possible partner on board. And we're kind of doing something very different here. We're always asking ourselves one simple question, right? Do we want to collaborate with this person? Do we get along with them? Do we feel like we share similar values? And is it easy to work with this person? You don't know these things when it's your first try or when you're just getting to know someone, but you can already keep those questions in mind when you're talking to someone for the first time. And most of the time, your gut feeling will guide you. If you dread a conversation with someone, if you hop on a call and you feel worse afterwards than you felt before, that's not the best signal. We have a lot of collaboration partners who are most valuable partners who have significantly smaller audience sizes than our email list, for example. But they are incredibly valuable to our launches, to our business, because their audiences are full of genuine fans who trust their voices. And that, like, if there is one thing that I wish I had known earlier, is you can kind of cherry pick your collaboration partners, like you should also cherry pick your clients.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that I see with a lot of people we work with, and I mean specifically like our clients, right? We recommend to collaborate more. And I see one like barrier that a lot of people experience is that they might be afraid of rejection. They are a little bit afraid or hesitant to reach out to other people on Substack, for example, for a collaboration. And I think there's this notion of maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe they think that I'm annoying by reaching out to them. I've discovered, and I have to say, I'm pretty much an introvert. I'm not quick to reach out to people unless I really think they're a good match. But what I've discovered is that like most people, 9 out of 10 other entrepreneurs, creators that I reached out to, it was always fun. They were always open-minded. They were excited to work together, and hardly ever was it a negative experience. And I think that's really good to keep in mind. We're all humans here, right? If you see someone maybe with a bigger follower count than you, like they are a human just like you, and they are excited to connect with other people that are inspiring, motivating, like-minded. So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to send that DM. Keep that win-win perspective. Absolutely. If you go in it with a perspective of how can I gain the most from this collaboration, it's not a collaboration. You're in there to take something. But if you genuinely are in there to work together, do a collaboration, or even just jump on a call with someone and brainstorm, right? Because this whole creator path can be lonely at times if you don't surround yourself with other creators. Definitely go ahead and do it. Send that first message, because most people are excited to work together and connect with like-minded creators. So let's move on to lesson number 4, which is to monetize the same skill, but with different offers. Philip, can you explain a little bit about that lesson?
Absolutely, I love to talk about that. So when we started our digital journey, all 3 of us started with digital products. So a digital product can be a course, it can be an ebook, it can be an audio file, whatever. The idea is that you create something once that then people can purchase and consume on their own. This is really cool for creators because you create it once and you can sell it over and over and over again with almost no additional costs. It's not like a book that you need to print again and again. It's something that you create once digitally and then you just give people access to it. So that's the first thing that we started with. And I think this is still an amazing opportunity because it provides you with the opportunity to scale. But nevertheless, even if you're creating the best course out there, you will always only answer about 80% of the people's questions. So you will be able to answer almost everything, but there will still be certain things that they would need to have individual feedback on, that they will have to have follow-up questions. And that's what brings you to the next level. So on top of any digital product or course, it's always awesome to add a new layer, that's group coaching. And I really love to offer group coaching because you as the creator are able to support a handful of people, no matter if it's 5 people or 50 people at the same time. And the most powerful thing is those people can learn from each other. So let's say I'm running a coaching program and Sinem and Yari, both of you are in this group coaching program. If you have an amazing question that Sinem hasn't thought of and that's not included in the course, she can also learn from it by me answering your question. So that's the peer learning effect. That's absolutely amazing for group coaching. And this approximately gets you from 80% things answered to 95% answered. Then there will always be 5% where people say, hey, I would really love to have individual feedback. I would really love to work with you, Jari, one-on-one for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, where we can really talk about my specific business, where you as the coach can really think yourself into my business, how you would run it and so on. And that's where the high-priced one-on-one coaching comes in. I know that one-on-one coaching is not for everyone, but nowadays we're seeing more and more people who reach out to us and say like, we did your course, or we don't even want to take a course. We want to have a shortcut. We want to build this business with you guys. We want to get results as quickly as possible. And that's exactly where one-on-one coaching comes in. If you're a creator and you already have a skill set, I would really encourage you to add all 3 layers. Start with a course, build a group coaching on top of it, and then offer individual one-on-one coaching for the 5% of VIP clients.
I think really the power of designing your business in this way is mainly in 2 reasons. One reason is that buyers buy again. So someone might initially join your course because it's usually cheaper, let's say $500 or below. Then these buyers, they might be positively impacted by your course. They already trust you, they know you, they like you, and now they're so much more likely to also want the group coaching element because they want to have more touch points with you, but also surround themselves with a community of like-minded people. Then the people who are in that group coaching program, they might be so positively impacted by the value you share that now they also join your one-on-one coaching or consulting program. So you have one customer that buys multiple offers, and so the lifetime value of that one customer is way higher than only having one offer available. And it's always going to be easier to sell to existing customers than it is to find new customers, right? So that's one reason. Second reason is you have different types of buyers. So there might be people out there, for example, in our case, right? They're looking to grow on Substack, but they would never buy a Substack course because they don't buy courses. They don't like the DIY approach. They instantly want the one-on-one support, the one-on-one accountability. They also don't want to be part of a group. They just want to work one-on-one with someone and pay a premium for that because that's the type of buyer they are. That's the type of support they want. So if you only have a course available, you're missing out on that type of buyer. Just in the same way that if you don't have a group coaching program, right, and people really like group coaching, they want to get your feedback, but also surround themselves with a community. If you don't have that, then you miss out on that buyer, right? So it's really nice because you can take the same skills you already have, but just turn it into multiple revenue streams. And I think that's really where the power of designing your business with course, community/group coaching, and then individual coaching or consulting, definitely something to recommend. So let's move on to lesson number 5, which is that the quality of your customers determines the quality of your life. Now, I know this sounds like quite a big lesson. Sina, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, maybe this is actually kind of a contradiction to what we said at the beginning in terms of treating your content, treating whatever you do as a business. And maybe if we talk about business, it sounds like you have to take it very seriously and you are not allowed to make mistakes and there's not much breathing room. But at the same time, when we think about clients, what I want you to really embrace is the fact that working with your clients should be fun. You are not building a content business in order to hate what you do. Most people build a content business, an educator business, because you genuinely want to love what you do and you're passionate about sharing your message. And if you have audience members, doesn't even have to be a client, or clients who kind of drain your energy and you feel like you have to, it takes you a lot of mental load to even have conversations with them, you want to basically kick these people out. And the first step is always kind of accepting that you're allowed to do this in the first place. I have worked with a lot of people one-on-one before I started to, scale courses. And there's been different kinds of clients. There's been clients where I knew that I had a call with them in the evening and I dreaded the whole day. And there are clients when I knew I was about to talk to them in a couple of hours, I was genuinely excited. And it's still the same to this day. And this also reflects in group coaching settings, to be fair. There are people in group coaching settings that make the group better and that make the group worse or just slower or more negative. And the most important thing to keep in mind is that you make the rules. This is your business. You can block accounts, you can cancel and refund clients, and you choose your collaboration partners, going back to that aspect of the lessons we share. You're allowed to do all of that, and you deserve to work with people and to create for people who appreciate your work. Now, the truth is, not everyone will be a perfect fit. And sometimes it takes a while to kind of figure out that you want to step away from a relationship, just like it is in life. But allow yourself to be very conscious of that, especially when you are not in the first, weeks and months of the journey, but you're already a bit ahead and you kind of value your time and energy. Just allow yourself to really put an end to customer relationships, partnerships, and even client interactions if they are doing more harm than good.
Absolutely. And I would say that on top of really enjoying the clients you work with, it's also important to think strategically about, okay, who are my ideal clients from a business perspective? Let's say you write about productivity and you share productivity tips for university students. That's great, right? University students, they need productivity tips. You might be able to build a large following that way. But in general, the average university student doesn't have a lot of money to spend. They might not have the finances to invest in a more expensive course or one-on-one coaching. So from a business perspective, that might strategically not be the smartest thing to do. If you're a career coach, for example, then you could say, okay, I help people who recently been laid off find a new job, and it's very noble. But if you've recently been laid off, the first thing you do is keep your money in your pocket, right? You're not going to spend thousands of bucks on career coaching because you're without an income right now. So it might be smarter to help someone transition from a job they're currently stuck in that they don't like to find their dream job. So it's really important to think, okay, who can I, first of all, enjoy working with, but second of all, also makes for a profitable business. So really thinking strategically about it. And I would say also be okay with defining who you don't help, who you don't serve, who's not your ideal customer. Because Philip, you already said this earlier on. If you're creating for everyone, you're creating for no one. So for example, for us at Write Build Skill, we're very clear that we help experts, we help coaches, we help consultants, we help educators build their online business. If you write poetry or fiction, then we're probably not the right match for you. And that's what we say, right? In our content really speaks to educators, to coaches, to consultants, because we've defined that's who we are able to help. And we know, okay, this audience, we could help them, but that's not going to be the most powerful selling point, right? So let's be okay with excluding that part of the audience, because then our language, our content can be way more focused and attract the right people. So it's really good to think about this. I think a lot of creators, when they start out, they think, I want to write for everyone because my knowledge is applicable to everyone. But if you do that, you'll end up not really attracting the right audience because it doesn't speak directly to one person. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. Yeah, with that being said, I would say it's time to move on to our bonus lesson. And the bonus lesson is as an online entrepreneur, you should take 100% of responsibility of everything that's going on, right? Ultimately, no one is coming to save you. It is all up in your hands. But before we dive into that lesson, Sina, maybe you can tell a little bit of the now funny story. Back when it happened, it wasn't funny, but now I would say it's a funny story.
Yeah, it was still not funny, actually. Let's try to keep it short. So once a quarter, The three of us, we get together, we have our quarterly team meeting, and this time we thought, well, let's use the opportunity to actually record our first podcast episodes in person in a cool podcasting studio, because this will look cool. We'll have an amazing video on YouTube. It will look much more impressive than recording virtually. So Yari was here in Vienna. We picked out a studio. We went there, lots of hours of preparation on what we want to say, how to do the setup and stuff like that. We recorded for a couple of hours, and then long story short is that our files got lost, because the way the process works is we go in there, we record, they have the cameras, they have the SD cards, and then they trim the videos and audio, make sure that we get the finished files through a Google Drive link or WeTransfer or whatever, which basically never happened. So we went in there, spent a lot of hours recording, and then someone lost the SD card, and here we are recording the episode again.
Round two. Yeah, I think the lesson we learned from that, because it's very easy to go into blaming mode. And I think there's a difference between what really happened. Yes, someone lost our SD card. That was reality, and you can be frustrated about it. But I think it's always good to look at yourself and ourselves. What could we have done to prevent this from happening? That moment right there, we could have said, okay, let's just extract the SD card from the camera and get the files to one of our laptops, which was easily possible. It would have taken maybe 5 minutes. But none of us were thinking about that. Okay, that's a mistake that can happen. But it was really looking at ourselves. How can we take responsibility in this sense so that next time when we do this mistake doesn't happen again, even though the mistake initially is from someone else's side. And I would say that's a really important trait as an entrepreneur. Take 100% responsibility. If you're creating content, but you're getting no traction, your audience isn't growing, it's very easy to blame the algorithm. It's very easy to blame a social media landscape. It's easy to blame other creators that are maybe using AI or whatever. That doesn't help you at all, right? It doesn't help you, even though sometimes those reasons might be legit. What will help you is taking ownership and taking responsibility and looking at yourself. What can I do differently to get a different outcome? Same thing goes for if you're not making sales, right? Maybe you blame other people, you blame your audience for not understanding your offer. Again, that doesn't help you, right? Really look at what can I do differently? What changes can I make so that I get the outcomes that I want? And I think that's such an important trait as an entrepreneur. It's all in your hands, right? Even though outside factors definitely have an influence on you, on your business, but ultimately it's up to you to take responsibility, to make the right decisions, to correct some mistakes, to learn and to get the outcomes you want. I think that's the bonus lesson really here that we learned from our lost podcast files, and that's why we're doing round 2 now.
And maybe I have a bonus lesson for the bonus lesson, which is again, trust your gut. I mentioned this before. I had a really bad gut feeling about the whole, we didn't know when the files would arrive, but we basically thought, oh, like this is a legitimate podcast studio. So if they are doing this, if they're doing things this way all the time, it's going to work. Just because something looks good on the outside or someone looks professional doesn't necessarily know they have their shit in order. And if you feel bad about something, it's your right to kind of back up yourself. Like you're allowed to get in there and say, hey, can I still have the raw files? And this is the same for any other thing that might happen in your business. Also with a collaboration partner, like stand up for yourself. If something doesn't feel right, you are allowed to kind of speak up your mind, because if you're investing time and energy, you're allowed to kind of back yourself up and make sure that you're actually getting your money's worth or your time investment's worth.
Absolutely. Trust your gut. That's great advice. Sinem, Philip, it was great having you here on the podcast on the very first episode of the Write Build Scale podcast, even though it was the second time recording it. Philip, where should people go if people want to learn more about what we do at Write Build Scale?
I think the easiest way to learn more about us is to go to our Substack. The link is writebuildscale.substack.com. We are super happy to connect with you guys. If you have any questions from this episode, anything that is unclear, feel free to reach out to any one of us. We're always happy to connect with you guys.
With that being said, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Write Build Scale podcast, and we hope to see you next week for the second episode.